For today's lesson, we're going to be taking a look at our Alibaba Elastic Compute service, and today we're going to be setting up our first kinds of servers and the different kinds of servers that we can actually access. So you should be in your main console here, and I put the link in the classroom so you can get there and kind of go through the process. You can see where we've got some product updates, some announcements, things that they're doing on denial of service support, security warning, all community. So these are all things that you kind of want to pay attention to. This is what's called the operations console. So you get straight up your resources, high risk events, how many alert events, your security score. There are two things we need to do. We need to check our security, right? Risks for free. We don't have any of these running right now, so we don't. And we don't have an SSL certificate yet, which is something that we will want to have when we build out our data or our websites, or we'll just go ahead and we'll buy our own certificate. But the Alibaba Cloud, as you kind of go through this, you can see I was recently in virtual private cloud process, but then we can go and pull up the kinds of things we want to do here. And we can see how much money we've spent. So it's actually really kind of neat, right? And we can learn some real quick kind of solutions, some other things to do. We've got some videos and other things to watch. So by being in here, you can kind of go through and take a look at where you are today, how much money you've spent, how much unpaid, how many tickets you've got. So it's kind of neat. You've kind of got this little workbench option. If you want to check that out, it will take you into the same thing that we're at right now. So if you ever get lost in there, just click this. It'll take you right back to home, this page here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring up our first Elastic Compute process. And we're going to walk through how that will actually work in terms of how the console works. So that's what we'll cover here next. And we'll kind of go from there, right? So we can go ahead and we can create our ECS instance. So we're going to go ahead and create, start and configure, and then set things up, right? So we can go through that whole process here as you kind of go through this. So we're just going to go ahead and create one. And then this takes you into the two ways that you can go about doing it. So you can do this as a quick launch, and that is if you don't have a whole lot of things that you are overly worried about, you just kind of want to get a computer up and running really super fast. And you've got some basic options, right? China, Asia Pacific, Europe and the Americas, Middle East and India. But one of the things I really want you to watch is this price tag here, right? This will tell you what your cost is per month. So if we wanted to move it to China and we wanted to move it to Qingdao, it would be $9.84. If we wanted to move it to Singapore, it would be $11.09 per month. If we wanted to move it to Silicon Valley, 11. If we wanted to move it to Virginia, it would be $9.92. And then if we wanted to move it to Dubai, it would be $22.64 per month. So again, you've kind of got some things you need to look for here as you kind of go through this. You want to pick what works best for the application you're going to build. And for this one, we're just going to do something really quick and dirty here. We're not going to do anything real major. We're just going to do something in America, Virginia, because it's a pretty good price. It's close to where I am physically, so I won't have to deal with a lot of network latency. We're just going to go with a quick computer system, nothing big, to just something I can go play with and work on for the month. We're going to go ahead and choose Linux, but I can also choose Windows Server, and I can choose what kind of data server I want. So let's say I choose that, and you'll see your price change, right? So everything that you do, and this is the good part about this, is that as you kind of go through this, you actually will get a price change based on what you want to do. We're going to do a virtual private cloud, no biggie here. We're going to assign a public IP address, and we're going to go ahead and see what this looks like. So pay by bandwidth is we're going to set a minimum bandwidth of 1 megabits per second, right? And that's okay, and that gives me 992. But what happens if I'm just doing a test server, and I kind of want to see what this looks like, and I want to have, I know it's just going to be small. It's not going to be anything major. I'm not going to have a whole lot of traffic. I just want to prove a point. So if I do 5 megabits, and for every 5 megabits from there on, I kind of can go ahead and choose what my price is going to be. But you'll notice that my price dropped for the computer system. It's $6.52 per month and $7 or 7 cents 7.6 cents per gigabit. So that's kind of huge, right? If I know what my traffic is going to be, it's going to be pretty minimal. I don't have to worry about it. I can go in that direction. If I wanted to have it for more than a month, I can actually get a better price per month, right? I actually save a month here, almost a little month and a half, just by scaling it out for a year. If I wanted to scale it out for longer, I could do that. But again, yeah, that whole process really helps out saving money. If you wanted to auto renew, you can go ahead and do it as a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription and just go ahead and pay up front for that. And that's how you set up your quick launch. Right, and then you can go ahead and you can preview it, and it will tell you, things that you've got to reset your login, and we'll cover how to do that in our next lecture. And then you have to agree to the terms and conditions and then create the order. So we're not going to do this. I'm not going to pay for this right now. We're going to go over by clicking back and go to the custom launch. Now, a custom launch is when you know exactly what you want to build and why you're building it, right? So you can do this either as a monthly subscription or annual subscription, pay for it by the month or pay for it by the year. The longer you do, the more money you save. You can do this as pay as you go, right? So we'll just keep on running it, and it's 11 cents per hour. Just keep on running this system as we've got. Or a preemptible. This is something where if someone else comes along, you can actually, your instance will stop. They'll do their work, and when their work is done, your instance will come back up, right? And that's 2 cents per hour. So you can really save some money doing the spot instance. But we're going to do this as pay as you go. And then we're going to be still in Virginia, but I can still have all the same options as I did before. I'm not too worried about which zone we're in. We'll just choose a random one. We can do it by type or by scenario based. So if I know kind of what I want to do, we're going to do web development and test. Right? So no biggie. Or we could do database, big data cluster, machine learning, supercomputing. There's a lot of different kinds of scenarios in here on how we want to do this. So again, we can do it by type, what kind of architecture, if I want to do big data, local solid state drive, high clock speeds. Again, it all depends on what you want to do on the process. So we're going to choose web development, front end, right? Because I don't really want to do anything. And we're just going to do some mobile internet application, right? And then this will give me some ideas on what I can actually get here for that. So we'll just go with a small one here. 2 CPUs, 8 gigs, Intel, 400,000 packets per second is really good, right? Network bandwidth is 1 gigabit. So that's okay, because again, I'm just doing it for test, and then I just want one. We'll go with a public image, so we'll just choose the old, whichever Linux we want. We'll go for 64-bit, and we're just going to go with a regular start. A quick start doesn't load up as many things, but there's some stuff I want to do here before we get loaded in. If I have my own image, it can be custom. I can have a shared image, or I can buy something off the marketplace if I wanted to. So we can have all these different kinds of options. We have no shared images, and I don't have any images I've made, but if I've made one, and we'll do that in a later section, we'll go ahead and we can use that. We'll be doing our own custom image here in a little bit. So we'll just do Linux, do 64-bit. We're just going to go with some pretty generic thing. But one thing I want you to watch, and watch what happens to this input-output per second, right? So as you change your disk capacity, your IOPS goes up. So if I wanted a 100 gig disk, right, I could actually just go ahead and type that in. If I wanted to have that, then my IOPS would go up to 2600 input-output per second, right? And then release those with the instance means that the disk is converted to pay-as-you-go. So we definitely want to go there. If I wanted to add more IOPS, I could add that. And if I added 3200, then I get my max IOPS of 5000. So performance matters. And because I'm just doing something really generic here, a small little guy, I'm not going to worry about that right now. But if you need more capacity and more performance, that's where you're going to go. If you chose anything, pay-as-you-go or preemptible or subscription, you always want to make a snapshot. Always, always, always. This is a good thing to do. So we're going to make it every day at 1 o'clock, and then we'll retain it for 7 days. We can create our own policy, and we're going to do it across all of my disks, right? Or if we wanted to, we could only do it across our data disks. But look at what your price does. It changes, right, as you go through this. So everything you add, your price changes. Everything you do, your price is going to change. Then, as we go into our next screen, right, we're just going to go drop it in our virtual private cloud. Be good to go here. We're going to have a IPv4 address, and same options here: pay by traffic or pay by bandwidth. And again, my idea here is that I'm going to be doing a little test system. I'm not doing anything major, so I'm probably going to pay by the bandwidth I use because I'm not going to use a whole lot. So that drops me down to 16.5 cents per hour to run this thing. So that's not too bad for my day, right? And working on it. We can select a security group. Now, here's one thing that's interesting about your security groups, right? These are, isolated group of instances, same region, but one of the things they want you to do is make sure you can log into your system, right? So what they do is they give you port 22 for Linux, for SSH, but there's a typo here, right? Your Windows port 3390 is actually really 3389. So this is correct, but this is a typo in the documentation. You will find typos in documentation all the time. That's super important to know. It's a good thing to know. It's something that you really want to be part of and understand this. But the other thing that's interesting about this too is I do want port 443 because I'm building a web front end, but because I'm building it on Linux, I don't need the Windows port to remote desktop in. So we can turn that off. So I will just have my web service 443 and I will have my SSH, my secure shell login on port 22. Do I want port for Windows? No, because I'm not running Windows. And then ICMP, if you want to do this, that's kind of that's a thing. But again, the idea being is that every once in a while you run into a typo here, and this is something we can go back to Alibaba and say, hey, there's this typo here, let's fix it. Then we've got our elastic interface if we want to, IPv6 not available, and then we go through and we preview how all this worked. So we've done all of our things, we're previewing it. So we're pay as you go, we wanted one, we're in Virginia, we're using 64-bit Linux, we're using a general purpose computer with just 100 gig, right? Default switches, default VPC, so default virtual private cloud and default virtual switch. And again, we can go back and change all this stuff. We can save this as a launch template. We can do all sorts of neat things with this once we get going. And we'll be working on elasticity as we go through this process and learning how to do scalability and on demand and being able to scale in and scale out. We'll be covering all those good things later on in the course. But again, when we're just getting started here, you're good to go. We do need to configure some login credentials, and we'll talk about how to do that as we go through the process. And again, our idea is just that. And then terms of service, you always have to agree to those. If you want to do an automatic release, at the time you specified, everything will be gone. It cannot be retrieved. So if you just want everything to shut down at the end of the day, when you've said, I don't want to do this anymore, you just shut it out down there. Then you click on create instance and you'll be running something for 16.5 cents an hour, which is a pretty good test server to be running on. So again, that big difference between that quick launch, right? It's just something that I just need a computer really fast, limited configuration ability. If I have a custom launch, it's because I know what I want to build. I'm building something very specific, and I want to have either type-based or scenario-based as we go through this, and I know what I want to build, and I have some ideas on how I want to go about doing it. You can really then choose all the things that you want, do some really good customizations before you even get started. So that's the end of today's lecture. I really appreciate your time today. Do feel free to ask me any questions after this, but you should see this video in your course shell. So do follow along and then always click on get started and get going. Thank you much and have a great day.